same way. Dom, like your review next week is like what I'm looking forward to the most, honestly.
Okay.
Yes.
Have you
Okay.
seen it yet, Dom, or no?
No, I have not.
Okay, so you don't even know why we're saying that then, probably. Okay.
I'm honored that you gents would think of me in that way.
No, I'm very excited to hear what you have to say in particular too, just because I love your perspective on movies like this, and I love talking about Ryan Coogler too. I think Ryan Coogler now has, when we look at, like, I was actually listening to a podcast briefly, and then I'll move forward, but I was listening to Sean Fennessy on the Ringer movies. If you haven't looked into him, highly recommend him. Fennessy, though, was reviewing Sinners with a couple other people, and he's like, somebody asked me about a year ago, he's like, we did a podcast on, like, who are the filmmakers of today that we're going to remember in 20 years? Like, today we talk about Scorsese, we talk about Spielberg, these iconic filmmakers. Who's going to be this generation's icons? And he was like, I was going through the list, like Ari Aster, Jordan Peele, some of those names. And he's like, I think now, he was like, I was kind of holding off on Coogler until he did something original again. And he said, he's like, Coogler is now in that pantheon.
Yeah.
Of directors too.
I'm looking forward to you guys talking about it.
I was already feeling that way with Coogler. Like, after seeing something like Creed, I was like, I think this guy's got something that, like, we're just waiting to see where it goes. And then with him doing the 2 Black Panther movies, I was like, yeah, like, I'm really seeing it here. Sinners is the one as well. It kind of cements it. Like, yeah, he's definitely that guy.
What a run. Fruitvale Station, Creed, Black Panthers 1 and 2, Sinners.
He's never made a bad movie. He's
Jesus.
never made a bad movie. I mean, Wakanda Forever is a little messy. How could it not be, just given everything that surrounded that movie? But the other thing that he did, too, is like we talk about these directors that do indie movies or do smaller movies and then get poached by Marvel or a big studio. But if you look at his trajectory, so he got Creed, which seems like a fucking cheat code of a movie to get, of an opportunity. But you got to think, the Rocky lore and everything is so strong, and that was the first spinoff. I mean, there was pressure there. There was tangible pressure there, and he knocked it out of the park with a great but still universal story about, like, masculinity, ambition, fatherhood. Like, he crushed that first Creed movie, and then he went on.
live and online. It's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever. Sleepless with Steve. Little tardy tonight, but there's no worries. We've got a lot to discuss today. Potential movie of the year so far. I want to put that qualifier in there. At least kind of going back and combing through what we've talked about leading up to this. Probably the movie that leaves us so far this year with the most to chew on and the most to discuss. Good evening. We're talking Ryan Coogler, Sinners. Joe Viso, Dominic Guanzon, two gentlemen I love talking movies with. And of course, I want to talk Sinners with them tonight. We'll get into it here very shortly. Since we are running a little bit behind, I'll just jump right into it. Joe, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited for the weekend because I'm done with this week. I gotta tell you guys some shit in the green room when we get done with the show about what happened at work. Just like a quick 5-minute story. But I can't wait for the weekend. Friday night going out with friends, seeing a movie. Saturday, I'm spring cleaning the hell out of my room after being immobilized on my bed for like however long my recovery was. And now that I can lift stuff, I'm cleaning the hell out of this room. I'm disinfecting the hell of it. And then Sunday is just going to be relax all day. So I overall, I'm doing all right. I just can't wait for the weekend.
Good stuff. Dom, how are you doing today, my friend?
Doing A-okay, getting ready for the season, doing a lot more outdoor work. But honestly, last show, I did a shout out to the studio on Apple TV Plus. Well, while I've still got my dad's login, I also want to give a shout out to Severance. I finished the first season and started the first episode of season 2, and that's it. So shut up. Anyway, yeah, good show.
I want to tell you right now, too, there's one point in that second season, you're going to be like, wait, they actually filmed that physically? Like, they actually did that? And it actually blew my mind looking up the behind the scenes of it.
Hell yeah.
TV Dom's good. We got to make that a recurring segment here on the show. I hope you can hold on to that Apple TV login for as long as you possibly can. For your sake. Sure. For your sake. We are talking Ryan Coogler's Sinners today. We were going to talk about it last week, but somebody wanted to review The Luckiest Man in America, fucked up the whole schedule. So we had to push everything back a week. So we are talking Sinners this week. I'm glad we are, though, because this is a movie, just first things first. I want to salute the American public, something we don't do a whole lot on this show for a lot of reasons. I want to salute the American public for one, because, I mean, not only did this thing have a really good opening weekend, made about $48 million, I want to say somewhere around there. This weekend, it held the top spot at the box office, but not only that, it also only lost about 6% of its opening weekend gross. Now, full disclosure, that's very, very little. That's unheard of. That's a record in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
A lot of movies lose 40 to 50%. Horror movies lose the most statistically. Horror movies can lose up to 73% week 1 to week 2. So for Sinners to drop a mere 6% is really shocking. What sucks is it's going to drop significantly this week, I think, because it's going to lose its IMAX screens to whatever the fuck Joe wants to see this weekend in Thunderbolts. No shame. But it's going to lose its IMAX screens to Thunderbolts this weekend. So that's going to make a bigger dent in the box office haul. But so far, it's grossed $175 million worldwide. That's an unbelievable win, not only for Warner Brothers, but for Ryan Coogler, who in 25 years becomes the owner of the movie, too. Shout out to him for negotiating such a great deal. There's just so much to talk about with this thing. This movie storms onto the scene when a lot of movies right now, excluding maybe Warfare and Minecraft, a lot of movies playing right now are really quiet and understated.
Warfare, Minecraft.
but it goes into the theaters right now at a time where there's a lot of like low key dramas out right now. There's a lot of low-key stuff at the theater. And how I describe this movie in my review at stevepulaski.com, to sum it up, is that this is a Southern Gothic gangster vampire movie. That is what this is. And man, is it beautiful. Directed by Ryan Coogler, the man who most recently gave us not one, but two, but both Black Panther movies. He also did Creed, the first Creed film. And before that, long before that, about 12 years ago, did a little movie called Fruitvale Station, where if you have not seen that, I highly recommend you watch it. All of those movies have one thing in common, including Sinners. They star the great Michael B. Jordan, who gives one of the most dynamic performances, maybe possibly the most dynamic performances, playing two characters in this movie, Smoke and Stack.
It stars him twice.
Yes, it does. All the running joke is now people that like when he shows up on set, or like when they're showing like cast and crew photos, they're like, of all like the cast and stuff at red carpet premieres, they're like, "Where's Smoke at?"
It's a pretty good bit.
But this movie, just to give a brief overview, it's set in Clarksdale, Mississippi, 1932. Smoke and Stack are two identical twins that return from World War I and return from Chicago after kind of rising up the criminal ladder alongside Capone. They basically come and they come back where they're from. They go back to Clarksdale. They got a huge wad of cash, and they want to open a juke joint. And they want to do this all pretty much in a day. They buy the land first thing in the morning, and then they go recruit some singers. They recruit a young boy who is their cousin. His name is Preacher Boy, Sammy Moore, played by Miles Catton, a very new actor. I think this is his first feature performance. He dreams of being a blues singer, runs away from his preacher father, hence why he's called Preacher Boy. He's going to perform at the joint, as well as Delroy Lindo in a fantastically drunkard performance from Delroy Lindo playing Delta Slim. They're basically, the first hour of this movie is essentially a period drama in a lot of ways. It is about them recruiting, having the Capitol, working with the Capitol, and establishing this juke joint. They get a lot of their friends involved, including Wunmi Musaku, who plays Annie, who's kind of a mythic friend of Smoke's. You've got Cornbread, played by Omar Miller, who's a well-meaning ex-slave. You also have a Chinese couple, too, who operate a corner store, help them with signage and things like that. And basically, this movie is really split into two halves. The first half is very much a period drama. The second half, then, and there is like a dividing shot of moonlight that separates the two halves of this movie. Once you see that moonlight and it becomes night, it's a vampire movie set entirely at the juke joint. And that's kind of where I want to leave off before I even get
that's
really
an
into my
excellent
movie.
summary, honestly.
I appreciate it. I'm going to leave off there. I think that's probably the best way to describe it, at least that I have the capabilities to. I'm going to pass it over to Joe to talk about Sinners. I know it's been on the tip of your tongue since you've seen it too. What do you have to say? General impressions of Ryan Coogler's latest.
So when I originally saw the filming of this movie, it was on site of I think it was because I think Ryan Coogler likes this film in Georgia a lot. So I believe they were filming in Georgia again when they were filming this, and I remember seeing set photos, and all I saw was Michael B. Jordan wearing like Blade-looking glasses. And I went, this is a vampire movie. This is 100% a vampire movie. I'm like, no man wears those glasses, and they're not making a vampire movie. And it's it's in the day and everything, but it's gotta be a vampire movie. And it was just the project was called Grilled Cheese at the time. It was just
that's really funny.
It just kept me so interested. I was like, what is Coogler doing? Because I'm like, it's not being adapted from something. He's not telling a true story like he did with Fruitvale. It's not a sequel to Creed or anything like that, like a legacy sequel of any sorts. So I was curious to know, is this going to be an original movie from Ryan Coogler? And long and behold, once the title was revealed and what the premise was and the cast was revealed and everything, it became very clear this is an original movie. And again, I want to echo what Steve said at the beginning of this show. I very much am happy to see that people put money where their mouth is, and they actually went to go support an original movie. I am so happy that this movie is as successful as it has been for 2 weeks in a row, critically, audience-wise, and box office-wise. I'm glad at the reception it's getting and everything, because to me, this is almost like a statement movie for where Hollywood just needs to go at this point. When it comes to allowing directors, give them just a nice cushion of a budget and literally just let them cook and let them tell their stories and everything. We've been echoing this on film Twitter and everything. Whenever the Academy Awards come on, it's the same thing I always see. You get a guy to go up there, and it was the writer of American Fiction. He went up there. He's like, "Hey, let's make 10 movies for only $2 million, or make one movie for only like $30 million and everything." And it's just like, we don't need to spend like $300 million on like one movie and everything. And everyone's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And it's like, and then we get those movies that come out, and then like nobody goes and see them. And it's like, oh, okay, where the hell were y'all at? So it's nice to see that a movie which was 90 million, shot on location, filmed in IMAX, and people actually went to go see it in IMAX. I think my favorite thing so far of this movie after seeing it has been seeing people who own theaters taking the photo in the IMAX, like where the camera's at, and you just see the whole auditorium, and it's like the final shots of this movie where it's daylight and you're seeing how massive the audience is even 2 weeks later. With all that being said, let me actually talk about the movie now, because I'm just talking about everything else that I'm just loving surrounding the movie. This movie to me is like watching a man literally create art in front of my eyes. This felt like, the longest time I was sitting there, I'm like, ain't no way this is not adapted from something. This feels like a graphic novel. This feels like there is so much lore with all these characters. And they have such great personalities and so much background to them. The Smokestack twins can just literally be a spin-off. I'm not saying I don't want a spin-off, but like they feel like they come from something, like some like other tale, and they're just put into this story, and it's just like they have so much history to them. They work with Capone. They were in Chicago gangs out there. They fought in World War One, and it's just like, holy shit, dude. Like, you know, it's just like, what else is in this story for them? The town itself has so much story to it and like history. Sammy, the singer, like, you know, his whole motivation of him wanting to leave the town, and like, you know, the reasons why and what music means to him and his passion. But then you have other characters too, and like the romance tied to them. You have Haley Steinfeld, who plays where is she on here? Mary. And, you know, she's dating one of the twins. And then you have, hold on, before I gotta give a shout out, because this was by far one of my favorite performances in the movie. Delroy Lindo as Delta Slim. Again, another character who, every conversation he's in, you feel the history there. It's the way these people are delivering lines. It's the way that they're selling these lines too. Like, you know, just the way the lines are written, I should say, not selling these lines. You feel the weight of like, this character has so much history to them. They've existed in this world for so long and everything. And that whole first hour of this movie is just setting everybody up, and you really grow to love them all. Even going to the other romantic interests, you have Ruthie and Beatrice, who also, you know, one falls in love with Sammy, the other one is Smoke's love interest, which I believe Beatrice loves, Ruthie is Sammy's. Again, so much great character to them, and even Bo and Grace, who own the store and everything. I was just seeing in that first hour, and I'm not kidding you. I literally thought, I'm like, holy shit, like, this is like Tarantino level of like just writing with these characters and the way they're bouncing off each other and talking to one another and everything. It honestly reminded me of it honestly reminded me of From Dusk Till Dawn. But like, I think From Dusk Till Dawn's all right. But this, like, I looked at this, I'm like, this is what I think like they wanted to do with Dusk Till Dawn almost. I know the second half is more meant to be like a grindhouse movie with Dusk Till Dawn. I get that, but like that first half is very much trying to be a crime movie, and it just doesn't work as well for me there. Here, it's played that way, and it's played so damn well. But I gotta say, as much as I'm loving the performances in this movie from everybody I've listed, two performances steal the show for me here. One is Michael B. Jordan as Smoke and Stack. I don't know when the hell Michael B. Jordan's going to get his Oscar, but it's got to happen at some point. But I got to say, man, the performance that every time this person stepped on screen, I was like, holy shit, dude, I am terrified right now, is Jack O'Connell as Remick, the like lead vampire of this movie. This man was absolutely terrifying whenever he stepped on screen. I love what Ryan Coogler did with the eyes, but again, when I keep talking about this movie and saying like every character has so much history, learning about his history as a vampire too, you know, he's existed for like years and everything, it was every scene he shows up in and you explore him more. I'm just sitting on the edge of my seat like, oh my god, dude, this is probably my favorite movie of the year. I'm in love with this movie. There's another big factor I haven't even scratched yet, but I think Dom will do it, so I'm gonna pass it off to Dom.
Yeah, I just Mickey 17, The Monkey, and now Sinners. Fantastic year for a single actor playing twins. Fantastic, fantastic string of movies. No, really.
Dom's been our connective tissue for movies all year long. It's been truly wonderful.
I just
I guess I should preface. I guess I should just preface this by saying too, because like by talking around it last week, we really did. Joe and I really sold you big on this movie, saying that like not so much that we liked it, which you can kind of clearly tell we did, but saying that like we were really interested in your analysis, we were really interested in your perspective on the story too. So I really want you, don't feel rushed, take your time, talk about what
Please,
you
yeah.
thought about Sinners.
Jesus, this is the most you guys.
This is
have
now
ever
Sleepless with
teed me
Dom.
up. Oh man, yeah. So I didn't watch the movie. No, I was busy. Oh man. So my long-standing bit, which is legitimate, is that I'm not the horror guy. And it's simply true that I tend to not really be that engrossed by it. But when you add, a deeper meaning behind other than trauma, right? Like character is a millennial and is traumatized. I'm kind of over that. When you add something behind it deep, then you can really drill a hell of a well with horror. Any genre, of course, but I do even me, I still believe that horror can be a fantastic tool for storytelling and messaging. I think Get Out was the nail in the coffin for any kind of argument for anyone who thought otherwise, right? So for Ryan Coogler to come out swinging, yes, out of his MCU era, which there's going to be another one, I'm sure. We're still in that era, I'm sure. But his last two movies as director was Black Panther, and before that was Creed. So 10 years, unless I'm wrong here, yeah, 10 years between original. Well, actually, no, Creed is a franchise film. So literally since Fruitvale Station, has he not done something truly 100% original? Although Creed's kind of, in between. Man, Sinners delivers on all fronts. This is a fantastic. You are dropped like waist deep into the swampy waters of Mississippi with this effing movie, and it is such when, when did The Color Purple take place? I didn't watch the movie, but when did that take place? General area. Thank you, gentlemen, for being my for being my computer gentleman. Like, do we visit this time period often? I think we do, but to really get an in-depth look into it from a holistically Black experience, I feel like we don't get it all that much. I feel like I could be wrong.
Color Purple's in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
Okay.
We also don't get the Mississippi Delta region very often,
which is so funny because it's such an iconic. It's iconic, but we also don't get a lot, at least in movies. It's usually a throwaway set piece or a like, oh, this section of the movie takes place in the Mississippi Delta, or there's a character from the Mississippi Delta, or they talk about the Mississippi Delta. This movie is straight up. If it wasn't for the vampires, would have been a documentary on the Mississippi Delta. That's how seeped into it you are. And the representation is off the charts. A lot of people have been talking about this, but Jesus Christ, the long overlooked Chinese Mississippi Delta minority is so well represented here. Fantastically, and they don't have accents, right? They speak with full Southern accents as they are integrated into these communities in a fantastic scene that just it's a really good oneer where the Chinese family is crossing between the black and white parts of towns basically without any problem whatsoever, and it's a wonderful filmmaking right there. But on top of that, the layers of culture if you didn't pick up on the layers of culture before, you certainly did when Ryan Coogler was throwing the whole timeline of the Black American experience at you in a fantastic sequence, a great, fantastic, like literally fantasy-esque sequence where they are bringing in all the eras of Black music. I will critique Coogler in not including ska as part of that heritage, but that's okay. He couldn't include every single piece of music on there. But no,
He's talking about Miles Catton's number at the juke
yes.
joint that, like you said, crosses over many different eras and styles of Black music and culture and stuff. I'm not gonna lie, took me a second. And then once I bought into it, I really bought into it, because that's also the time in the movie too that really sort of breaks down the reality of it. And it's a striking scene. I can't wait to see that one again too.
Yeah, it is kind of weird. It's like, why the hell is Lenny Kravitz here? Like, what are we doing? No, not literally, but just the vibe. In terms of how, actually, let me just mention this. Joe, you were going through the cast. I would actually hate to be Miles Canton right now. How the hell do you follow up your role as an actor this is your debut role? It's in Sinners, and you're the third billed actor. That's your debut, right?
Yeah.
In your debut to tens of millions of people across the world, and that's your debut. How the hell do you follow up with that?
I got an answer to that. I just looked on his Wikipedia really quick, and he was asked by Variety about his acting ambitions, and he said that he would be interested in appearing in a Marvel film. And when asked about which one, keep in mind he's 20, I think. Keep in mind they asked him which superhero would he like to play, and his response was, "I mean, my name's Miles."
There you go.
Kid's smart. Anyway, I don't mean to interrupt.
No. Doing the full Chloe Zhao treatment. You get into an Oscar-winning film, and then you go off and do a Marvel movie. In terms of how this movie treats not its source material, because I believe this is an original film, right?
Yeah,
Truly original
100%,
movie.
yeah.
How it
feels
treats
like
its
it isn't,
time
but it
period.
is.
Right? Right? Like, that's so refreshing. It's honestly it's astounding to me that this doesn't come from something.
Yeah. And again, I mean that in a good way. Like the fact that it has
100%.
this much rich, history to its characters and world, and it's all original. It's like, wow, amazing. Absolutely amazing.
I can't believe Ryan Coogler invented vampires. Absolutely astounding.
Can't believe Ryan Coogler invented Black music.
And Irish music.
Okay. We never talk about the music enough on this show for films.
Oh, if there's a movie to do it with.
It's so funny how I talk about this with Crazy Rich Asians, how Crazy Rich I'm sorry. Right? Crazy Rich Asians, was that done by a white guy, or was that done by
No, that was done by
John M. Chu.
John M. Chu.
Okay, that was was it Coming to America 2? Okay, look, the bit is over. This was done by a Swedish dude, by a pasty white Swedish dude. Ludwig Göransson is actually incapable of missing, I think, at this point. He just he cannot strike out as a pitcher, even if you blindfolded him and spun him around 5 times. Like, he just is really good at doing basically any kind of music, whether it's space westerns with The Mandalorian or effing Oppenheimer. Then it's that's Oppenheimer is one of the few scores I listen to independently, like just straight up. Can you hear the music is just top tier for me. But
let's not forget too, I mean, he was probably my favorite part about Tenet. Like, I don't like Tenet, but if there was one thing I enjoyed about Tenet, it is that score.
Yeah, man. Oh boy, it's
He's worked with Coogler, like Michael B. Jordan. He's worked with Coogler on everything he's ever done, going back to Fruitvale.
Okay, Fruitvale
was his second full-length score.
Going back to Community, TV show Community, Ludwig Göransson went from Community to this now, and it's absolutely fantastic. I mean, honestly,
I was going to say he went from 30. His very first film role for score was 30 minutes or less.
Oh my goodness. Who was I? Oh yeah, I was looking up just like a few hours ago. It's like Haley Steinfeld went from being the opening act to Katy Perry's tour, to now being in this movie. It's like fantastic glow up for everyone involved. And I think she was a child actress too, but regardless. Yeah, man. There's so much to sink our teeth into, but I will simply end my quick segment here, not so quick segment, by applauding Ryan Coogler for really effectively not that I know this culture all too well, but this part of history. This is true, like a historical fiction, obviously historical fiction story, but how rich it feels. The setting, the sets, the costuming, and the violence, and the like. I could like feel the air of a hot summer's night
Yeah.
in freaking Clarksdale, Mississippi. It's like just the racism emanating from the man selling them this sawmill is so good, and it just turns into this fantastical barn burner of a movie that just keeps going. And yeah, it really does have elements of like Tarantino, not just in its dialogue, but in its violence.
Yeah.
I was watching vampires get blasted here, and I'm like, am I watching Django right now? Like what is happening? This is insane.
That's a good seg. There's two
Yeah,
points I'll
go for
bring
it.
up. There's 2 points I'll bring up here. The violence, you could say, and From Dusk Till Dawn too, Tarantino's involvement in that one as well. You can say there's a little bit of Tarantino crossover. I personally found the dialogue. I don't know if you've read you guys have read any of the playwright August Wilson. I'm sure I've brought him up on the show before. His most famous, he's got a few, but his most famous work, he kind of got a little bit more mainstream recognition. He wrote the play Fences that then became the Denzel Washington movie.
That's why it sounded familiar. Yes.
August Wilson wrote one of my all-time favorite plays called The Janitor. The Piano Lesson's another great one. A lot of the dialogue from like the locals in this movie reminded me of stuff that he would write.
Yep.
The way that he has this like finger on the pulse of culture, knows how people talk. I really felt kind of the spirit of August Wilson. I don't know if he's a personal influence of Ryan Coogler. I don't know. Ryan Coogler's very well read, so I would assume he is. But where I really felt Wilson's influence was the scene when Delroy Lindo's in the car and kind of iterating his past when they drive by the slaves and he waves to the slaves and everything like that, and then talks about his personal experience as a young slave. I felt a lot of Wilson in his words. I felt a lot of that like lived in like natural dialogue conversation. You could see the pain on Lindo's face as he's telling this story too. And then I want to say, like, a lot of the first half of the movie is predicated on those naturalistic conversations. The second half of the movie, when Jack O'Connell comes into play, Jack O'Connell being the vampire, the Irish vampire who's part of this folk trio, who tries to convince the people in the juke joint to let them in. And that's where Ryan Coogler, again, one of the many surprises of Ryan Coogler is really how mostly faithful he is to vampire lore in this movie, about how you have to let the vampires in.
Dude, it's been a long time since I've seen that with a vampire.
It's been a long ass time because there's a lot of writers that probably wouldn't know how to get the plot into motion.
Dude, honestly, the last time I saw that, it was a comedy. It's What We Do in the Shadows, both the show and the movie. I was just like, man, when I saw this pop up in the movie, I'm like, holy crap! Like, I haven't seen this be done with vampires in so long.
It's a rarity nowadays, and Jack O'Connell, again, he plays an Irishman who's the lead of this folk trio, and he's a vampire. The other thing that's really smart that Coogler does, because he's the sole writer on this movie too, he doesn't make the vampires an easy bunch to dislike on the surface. Like, they're not blanket villains. I don't want to go into the whole like thematic relevance of it. We can talk more about that afterwards. No, I meant before the intermission, rather.
Yeah.
I meant before the intermission. Right. We'll talk about that after. But because it deals with homogenized cultures and things like that. We'll touch on that soon. But I knew where you were going with it. But like, aside from the neck-biting, blood-sucking mental manipulation and mind games and shit, they're really like, initially, you could see the appeal of these vampires as like a bunch of these like hippie idealists who believe in like fostering teamwork along with their immortality and kind of breaking down cultural barriers. They sing a fucking great Irish jig song I've mentioned already like 3 times, Rocky Road to Dublin. Just an absolute banger. I can't wait till this movie becomes available on streaming, because then that clip's going to be on YouTube again. I'm dying to see that clip again along with Miles Catton's performance. But But you have Coogler's. What I'm getting at here is Coogler has a lot of dimensional writing going on too, from the naturalistic conversations of the characters to the portrayal, the authentic portrayal of classic vampires, right down to, the convincing arguments these vampires do make when they arrive.
To balance all of
Yeah.
that on top of also exploring blues music and race relations in the
Yes.
South and everything, like to balance all these plates, and by the end of the movie I go, I don't think a single one of those fell off and broke. I actually think you actually nailed balancing everything perfectly well. Is impressive. Like
This movie's no more thematically full than Mickey 17.
Yeah.
For example, it's no more, which we kept saying was overstuffed and felt like it. Sinners has a shitload going on, and I feel like it accomplishes everything exceedingly well.
That's such a great comparison too, because again, it's not even just the dual performance, but yeah, there is a lot of themes that it's bringing up in Mickey 17. But it could have just been how heavy-handed they went with themes, like especially with Mark Ruffalo's character.
That's absolutely
and,
what it is.
And compared to Sinners, where it's done very it's not. I'm not saying scratching the surface, but it's done very smart. It knows when to tap in with it and where to back out, and just let the story just be told.
And that discipline to, because anyone, I think I can speak for all of us saying that I want a 2-hour movie on the Chinese couple. I want a 3-hour movie on I want Delroy Lindo to just
I would love
Clarksdale, Mississippi.
I would love if Ryan Coogler did, and I'm sorry to keep bringing up the guy's name because I'm not trying to say this is Tarantino because Tarantino's really just like every other filmmaker when it comes to not every other filmmaker but where he gets his influences from. But what Tarantino did with Django eventually is, that whole prequel part, not prequel, that whole montage of him and Christoph Waltz's character going on adventures and bounty hunting together, that is actually a comic line you can read. And I would love it if Ryan Coogler actually, when he gets the rights back in 25 years or something, that he, just sells it to, Dark Horse Comics or something, and they just do, comic spin-offs of before the juke joint got invented, these are all the characters and where they were at. Just a mini series.
I think a graphic novel is the way to go for
this.
If
I would love that.
Talk about a follow up. I think because you already have the Southern Gothic, you can almost make it just a real like a horror comic in a lot of ways too. There's boundless influences. I was trying to think of who did As I Lay Dying? Was it Faulkner? It was Faulkner, William Faulkner. You get the Southern Gothic interpretations of Faulkner-esque literature, and you can use that as the basis of a graphic novel or a comic line, like you said, Joe. I think very easily. We'll come back. There's still much more to discuss. We still got about a half an hour of runway here on Sleepless with Steve. So glad we are talking Ryan Coogler Sinners. So glad we are all involved. I said in the title, it's an analysis, and that's exactly what it is. We're going to be analyzing more of Ryan Coogler Sinners coming back here in about 60 to 90 seconds. Don't go anywhere. Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube. Looking forward to when you do make that announcement, my friend. That'll be a good time on the show. I'll give you the floor probably to start the show on that one.
Yeah.
But Inside Out 2, the long-awaited sequel to Pixar's movie Inside Out, which I remember vividly seeing in theaters back in 2015. I remember, and it didn't dawn on me. Catherine and I rewatched the first one last week before the new one came out, and I saw that movie early. They actually had an advanced screening thing for it at AMC, and I saw that movie early, and it was a packed house. It was packed. I think it was sold out, and I remember that movie just being inspiring to watch and seeing the reactions of people all
oh no.
Looking forward to when you do make that announcement, my friend. That'll be a good time on the show. I'll give you the floor probably to start the show on that one.
Yeah.
But Inside Out 2, the long-awaited sequel to Pixar's movie Inside Out, which I remember vividly seeing in theaters back in 2015. I remember, and it didn't dawn on me. Catherine and I rewatched the first one last week before the new one came out, and I saw that movie early. They actually had an advanced screening thing for it at AMC, and I saw that movie early, and it was a packed house. It was packed. I think it was sold out, and I remember that movie just being inspiring to watch and seeing the reactions of people all laughing consistently. That felt, I don't want to be hyperbolic, because I'm honestly one of the few people I think that liked Finding Dory more than Finding Nemo. I don't want to say maybe the last great theatrical Pixar movie was Inside Out, because Soul technically didn't get a Pixar or didn't get a theatrical release. So I want to say it was the last, I would say, complete knockout from Pixar.
I
Inside
agree.
Out 2, though, there was reason to be a little bit trepidatious with this sequel, I guess, if for no other reason than Pete Docter, the director, who I've said for years is the creative genius behind Pixar. He really is. He's the chief creative officer. He's responsible for Up. He's responsible for Inside Out. He's responsible for, I think, some of the most emotionally affecting movies of the company, and also some of the most ingenious concepts of the movies. He's only a producer on Inside Out. He was the writer and co-director of the first movie, and or the co-writer and director of the first movie. And it was fascinating to listen to him talk about the collaborative process of writing that screenplay, and his ideas and how it really took shape. This new one is directed by Kelsey Mann, and this is her directorial debut. The only thing that she's directed was this Monsters Inc. short, Party Central. That was the only thing that she's directed, which is one of the more forgettable shorts that they've done. I'm not going to lie there. I can't remember even what it preceded. It might have preceded Inside Out, quite frankly. Now that I think about it, it might have preceded Inside Out. But first off, you could tell shit at Disney's bad. They don't even have shorts. They don't even have a short attached to this movie, which I
Okay,
thought
I was
odd.
wondering if I was like, I know I adjust my time so that I skip.
Back talking Ryan Coogler's new movie Sinners. It's Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube. Still so much to touch on. We did touch on the music by Ludwig Göransson. We did talk about him a little bit. We talked about sort of the difference in the way that Coogler tells this story, whether it's through like a period piece setting and naturalistic dialogue versus the way he presents the vampires and things like that. This is a movie that you can absolutely appreciate as a carnage-laden vampire movie on so many different levels. You can absolutely appreciate it like that. You know, the last 45 minutes or so, or like I would say the entire, most of the late second act to the good portion of the third act is devoted to that vampire carnage that attracted so many people in the trailer. But the great thing about this, because Coogler's such a smart writer, is that this movie has a lot going on thematically. I'll pass it over to you, Dom. What did you think about the way Sinners handled some of its themes, or just some of the themes of the movie that stuck out to you?
I think it did it fantastically because at one point in this movie, I did start thinking to myself, "Do we need the vampires? I'm kind of engrossed by this, regardless. Like, what are we doing here?" And then I realized once the movie actually finished and played out, I came to the conclusion that you can't make this movie you can't tell this story without the vampires, which is that's fantastic. Like that's my favorite kind of storytelling, is when you cannot tell it any other way, or maybe you can, but damn, it's going to be a hell of a challenge. And like what you do with what is done with the vampires here is so beautifully done. The act of assimilation, which you alluded to, Steve, the assimilation, turning certain people into this one big homogenous group, the blood sucking, both literal and metaphorical, here is on full display. And even how characters, like black characters, when they're themselves, they're black Mississippians, but when they are turned by these vampires who are initially white, they suddenly start using a lot more white voice, and they could become a lot nicer. And it's like, oh, okay, there's another metaphor right there. And that's the beauty of the vampire shtick, really. And you get to layer a whole lot of blood and guns and fun impalements. But what it comes down to is simply you have a classic, beyond classic trope, a character archetype, a monster, and it is completely transformed and recontextualized for its setting. And the depths to which it can go to in Clarksdale, Mississippi, circa 1930, is we could do a dissertation for the next 3 hours, frankly, I'm sure. But that's I really can like what's another example, because there's just so many. I can't think of any other than like the music, okay, here's what I was trying to angle at, is that I'm so happy that the true villain, okay, actually I take it back, that the primary antagonists, the ones that we get the most screen time with, the vampires, right? They're not they're not KKK members, at least like at their forefront. There are KKK members in this movie who are there for a majority of the movie, but they're vampires more than they're KKK, right?
Yeah.
The actual ringleader of the vampires is Irish, which, as we all know in American history, has had their fair share of oppression.
Yep.
And they were one of I mean, black people were the original oppressed. They were here before the founding of the country. But for the Irish, they were here a long ass time, and it was disgusting racism against the Irish. And to make the antagonist not a, hood-wearing Klansman or whatever, make that character a hood-wearing Klansman, but rather an Irishman is honestly really tragic, and it's addressed in the movie both through dialogue, but also through what I think is my favorite scene. I take it back. There's multiple favorite scenes because this movie's so good. But one of the creepiest scene
The prayer
is
scene?
when the vampires are gathered outside and they're doing an Irish jig. It is the most effed up Irish jig I've ever seen in my life.
Dude,
There's like some crip walking in there too.
Yeah.
That
The
scene was so
synchronization,
metal.
dude, everyone is covered in blood coming out of their mouths because they're all biting each other. The Dutch angles, the spinning, the hypnotic spinning. It's like, oh, this is
And the glowing eyes too, man. I mean,
the occult. This is
Rocky
absolutely
Road
terrifying.
to Dublin. Rocky Road to Dublin, baby.
And just to see that cycle of trauma and violence that we see to this very day in 2025 amongst so many communities, it's so sad. And to see it on display there on screen is so beautiful. There's such a deeper meaning behind it. And then the fact that Coogler did all of that, right? Didn't just go for the easy bait, and then still gets Michael B. Jordan to just fucking massacre a shit ton of KKK dudes at the end. That was like, okay, there's your vegetables. You actually enjoyed it. Here's your dessert. And then we get the trailer. We get all the shots from the trailer, including Michael B. Jordan. I'm kind of spoiling this, sorry. But Michael B. Jordan, like, just shooting
a Tommy gun
out of so many dudes, so many racist assholes. Mwah, beautiful. I'll stop my tirade right there because I can keep going.
What say you, Joe? Anything to add to that?
yeah, no, the theme, I mean, like, everything Dom said I can echo as well. The one I wanted to touch on is, I think, like, I don't really know if I could find the right word for it, but I'll just throw a couple out. The themes of legacy, ownership, or like having your own independence. I think this film does touch that as well. Both with like Smoke and Stack owning their own piece of physical property as black men, their own business and everything, as well as the Asian couple, the Bo and Grace, like, their own shop and everything. Like, there's a whole thing about that, and like, and again, like, because I've seen some people say like, oh, did they really have to have the whole shootout at the end that, like, with Michael B. Jordan, the Ku Klux Klan members? I'm like, no, because like, again, it just comes back to that whole theme of like, yeah, like, they didn't really own that. That was gonna be taken away from them at the end of the day, like, and everything. So like, it's like, having your own ownership, your own independence, you're leaving your legacy. I mean, there's other characters too, like Mary, Haley Steinfeld's thing, her heritage. She doesn't get to own it, really. She has to be sold into a fake life that Smoke sets up for her and everything. And it's not what she wants, and they explore that as well. And it's so interesting there. And then, of course, Sammy with his musical legacy and how much that means to him. When the film covers those, those to me, like, I feel like that's like kind of like the grand idea that they take with every character, and then they just kind of stem out with like each different thing, like, whether it be cultural appropriation, racism, the power of music, legacy and identity, community and resilience, whatever else you want to throw out there in terms of other themes that, like, we've seen in previous Ryan Coogler films, from Black Panther to Fruitvale Station, and even Creed itself, with legacy being a big thing there. It's just like, wow, man, like, seeing you like kind of have this be the centerpiece of it, and all these characters have something to that they want to own, that they want to have ownership of their legacy, property, whatever, heritage even. It's so impressive, and then to see where it stems out from. And again, like that whole analogy I was saying of like spinning so many dishes or like, you know, bouncing so many dishes and he doesn't break a single one. It just made me sit there in awe just watching this kind of just flow through so many different themes that Dom mentioned, that I mentioned, and just like it covers all of that very gracefully. Yeah, and every character has a moment to shine with that. Delroy Lindo as well, like where that's a guy who did lose, like, you know, a lot of his legacy and everything. Like, you know, he was abused by the system and everything. He had to go to prison and he was taken advantage of there and everything. And it's like you explore that. Like what happens if you actually, because all the other characters we see, like they're kind of grappling with it. We're seeing them in present time dealing with this. And Sammy we see it to the very end. But with Delroy Lindo's character, you see that get taken away from him and what it does to a man, and or just any person. And it's like, oh shit, like this is traumatizing to see.
There's a beautiful moment. There's so many beautiful moments, but one of my favorite moments is when it's in the scene where Michael B. Jordan, Miles Canton, and Delroy Lindo are driving, and Delroy Lindo, the conversation quickly turns to a lynching, and Delroy Lindo is obviously very upset about it, and then he goes like and then he starts humming, and then it turns into song. I'm like,
Yeah.
that 10 seconds right there, that is the Black experience in America, kind of pretty much summed up.
Yeah.
Is that nonstop suffering, and then the chances you get at life, you take advantage of for maximum effect, and you make beautiful art with it. And it's great. Done in seconds. That's absolute kino, absolute cinema.
I forgot to add this onto my whole theme thing because I had the little note here at the end. I forgot to say this too. And I was talking about ownership and everything. And I think it's just so beautiful that at the end of the day, this is all going to go back to Coogler and he's going to have the ownership of it and everything. It's like, oh my God, that's just poetic, honestly.
I was gonna add that as a little tale too. I think it's wonderful that Warner Brothers, and you know what, like you know, to give credit where credit's due. We've talked a lot of shit about Warner Brothers over the last year, deservedly so, in a lot of respects. But honestly, to greenlight this movie and to give it the budget that it deserved, and then to give Ryan Coogler, again, this does not happen. I don't think people realize. You know, this doesn't happen what Coogler gets. Like this is something I think Tarantino has a clause worked into, probably now even more so with the like dissolution of like the Weinstein Company.
I know he has it with at least Hollywood, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, but he doesn't have it for all his movies. Spielberg doesn't have this. Scorsese might have it for a couple, maybe Mean Streets and a couple other movies. Kevin Smith now has it with Dogma, but this doesn't happen very often. Like where a filmmaker, a director owns the work and gets to make the final decision of it after a certain period of time. I think it's 25 years. And then the rights completely revert to Coogler, which gives him the opportunity to maybe do more with this story in the future. Time will tell. But I laud this movie, though, because I think there was a lot of speculation, too, because once Coogler made Fruitvale Station, that was his directorial debut. That put Michael B. Jordan and Ryan Coogler on the radar of a lot of people. And that movie wasn't even necessarily very big either. It got snubbed from the Oscars that year, something that still pisses me off because it was an excellent film. And it was like, I remember noting at that time, I was like, okay, his next movie was announced to be Creed, and I was like, well, that's interesting because you know you're waiting for him to go to Marvel or something like that. You know, maybe given the fact that Fruitvale was a modest success, maybe he would get one more original story or he would do something original. But he took it and ran with Creed, which I think we kind of underestimate how lofty the expectations were. I mean, to go to your second feature is a spinoff, one of the most iconic and beloved sports franchises in all of cinema is not an easy feat. But he took a completely different route with that movie. Really made Apollo Creed a wonderful, Adonis Creed, a wonderful character, dimensional, tackled a lot of familiar themes, but did so in a universal way. Then he goes Black Panther and Wakanda Forever, that twofer, Wakanda Forever being further complicated when the lead actor dies, and it's I mean we I mean he's on a short list right now, including Sinners. These 5 movies I just mentioned, he hasn't made a bad movie.
No,
He's
he
yet to
hasn't.
make a he's yet to make a bad movie. At what point do we start really like talking about the external of like this is one of the best starts to a directorial career? And this is not a director who made like indie movies like Sean Baker or somebody like that who was kind of working outside the Hollywood system and then got larger budgets and stuff like that. This was a guy who his second feature was a spin-off of one of the most iconic American franchises. And then he was part of the Marvel universe. Like it's truly astounding when you look at it. And I think he has now, because now this is again only his second original story. And even Fruitvale Station was based on the tragic real-life death of Oscar Grant. This is his second original movie. I think it's fair to say right now, you put him in the echelon of filmmakers, Coogler, of filmmakers of this generation that will be relevant for subsequent generations, whose works will pass on to subsequent generations.
I agree.
Yeah. 100%.
Absolutely outstanding conversation here too. Anything else that we want to touch on? Michael B. Jordan, I think, is super impressive playing dual roles. There's a wonderful cameo from a blues legend that I don't want to give away. This is probably the most substantive mid-credit scene in a long, long time.
It's like those old blues people are they're pretty crusty, all right? And if they're not actively playing their blues, they tend to not be out doing much else with their activity. This guy, he was like actually acting a little bit. I was like, dang, you're actually doing it.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Because I thought it was just gonna be that final shot, and it's like, no, we
Yeah,
actually
me
spent
too.
time with him, and I'm like, wow, this is actually like really cool. By the way, if people start giving that shit and being like, oh, what if movies start doing this now? Who cares, dude? Sinners deserved it. All the others are copycats, honestly, for me at this point.
No, it's a substantive end credit scene. Catherine tagged me in something today that I thought was interesting. A little side note. I don't know if you guys remember or catch the date that end credit scene, that mid credit scene takes place in. It's 60 years after the events of the movie we just watched. So it's 1992, October 16th, 1992. It's the same day you're not going to guess it. It's not a historically relevant thing.
Okay.
It's the same day that Candyman was released in theaters.
Oh shit.
Okay.
Wonder if that was intentional. Could have been.
It's Coogler, I think so.
Yeah, that sounds right. If it was
think
any other movie, but Candyman, yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, I just thought she tagged me in that, and I was like, that's a really somebody Googled that date and like was combing through any kind of connective tissue and stuff. I mean, if anybody wants to touch on too, I think Michael B. Jordan's phenomenal. Like I was just saying, phenomenal in playing dual roles as Smoke and Stack, two widely different characters.
He was so good at playing two different characters that are twins, identical twins, and everything, that there were points in this movie I forgot it was the same actor playing two people. Like, I was just watching the movie and I'm like, damn, this guy playing Stack is oh fuck, that's right, it's Michael B. Jordan. Damn, dude, Smoke is such a good actor. Man, him and Stack shit. Oh wait, that's Michael B. Jordan. Like it's just like I was just like, god damn, I got so lost in the movie that I forget. I'm like, yeah, it's the same damn actor, man. Which is like, and not to discredit Robert Pattinson, but it's like Mickey 17. I don't mean to be downplaying Mickey 17. I do like that movie.
That
but
was
it's like,
honest. Well, that was the best part of Mickey 17.
It was, yeah.
The two Mickeys, yeah.
It really was, and he did a great job too at outstanding. But it's just like, dude, like Michael B. Jordan made me forget at times, like it's the same person. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to add on is, man, the romance in this movie is fucking hot. All right, I'm just gonna say it. Like,
here comes the Haley Steinfeld rant.
No, dude, everybody in this movie is hot. All the scenes where they're steamy, they are sexy. It's hot, and it's been a while in the movie where it's like they didn't have to really undress or really do anything to show off ass or anything like that, and it was still just hot. It was just like, wow, this was
not a lot of nudity in this
no,
movie.
There was actually, there wasn't that.
As sultry as it is.
Yeah.
It's really reserved. Now there's about like
There's
5 or
3
6
munchers in this movie, and yet we did not get any nudity. All right, like that's impressive.
No, and it's got like 5 or 6. Yeah, I'm gonna put my film critic hat on over here, my journalistic hat, and use a big word over here as opposed to the colloquialism online. There's about 5 or 6 conversations related to cunnilingus in this movie.
This is Coogler. This is Coogler directly telling the Reddit incels, "Hey, you have to give as well. You have to do it. It can be enjoyable."
There's a lot of mentions of that shit in there for a mainstream movie, and there's been so much commentary about how sexless mainstream cinema has gotten too. And it's like, well, this one, you don't even need to gratuitously show it in order for it to have this sort of sultry, sexy edge to it.
I'll say, right, like, I've never had a problem with it, but I have had consistent problems growing up with like watching movies, particularly in the 90s and early 2000s, of movies that was like, okay, how do we show these two characters that they like each other, have them bang? And it's like, I don't think that was necessary. I mean, I understand that's how life is, and if that's the point, okay, sure. But like, for instance, what's a random example? Enemy at the Gates, starring
Really is. Holy crap.
There's a random example.
But but it takes me out of it because it's like Enemy at the Gates. Oh, fair. Yeah, Rachel Weisz just she has sex with what's his name? Jude Law in this movie to show that they like each other. I'm like, I don't think you needed necessarily to do that. And the fact that look, not just the fact they did it, it was the fact that it was like an extended like minute long sequence. I'm like, this is uncomfortable and like not. It doesn't have to be hot, but also doesn't have to be this awkward, dude. Like, what are we doing?
I look at the scene with like Beatrice and Smoke in her shack, her little like shop that she has, and again, like they go throughout the history of those two, and it ends with them making love and everything. But it's like when you get to that point, it's almost like no, that was earned because like I totally believe this 100% and everything. Like, and it's like, you don't really get that a lot of days with modern movies. And for the person, and again, I'm not trying to shade people here, not trying to downplay, not trying to say anything, but Olivia Wilde was saying this when she did make Don't Worry, Darling. And whenever a sex scene happened in Don't Worry, Darling, it just, I don't know, it kind of just fell out of place for me. It was like, all right, yeah, I get it, but it's just like, you know, this is just now just happening for the sake of happening. Like, she mentions, like, yeah, there's not that much sex in mainstream media anymore, and it's like, okay, that doesn't mean we throw in a sex scene every, like, 20 minutes just because you got fucking Harry Styles and Florence Pugh here. Like, you know, make this shit earned.
I also think, in part, and this could be a whole other Sleepless discussion, I do think part of the paradigm shift is due to the fact of, I think a lot of filmmakers nowadays think like, you know, who grew up on 90s movies and 80s comedies and a lot of sex comedies and stuff like that, where like in movies like, I don't know, 40 Days, 40 Nights or American Pie, their two characters be conversing and then a woman walks in naked.
Yep.
They look at a lot of those gratuitous like moments and stuff from these like 90s, like Van Wilder and all these, you know, these early 2000s raunchy kind of movies and stuff where there was a lot of gratuitous nudity and a lot of gratuitous sex. And the culture obviously has shifted to the point now to where, you know, social media pays a lot more attention to that kind of thing in the context and stuff, and there's think pieces and whatnot, where the new generation of filmmakers has kind of swung the pendulum a little bit too far to the right in a different direction, where it's like very sterile and very like almost like unemotive in some ways. And it's like this movie finds a good middle ground of like, you know, having very, you know, there's a lot of filthy dialogue in this movie too. There's a lot of vulgar dialogue in this movie too, but it never feels gratuitous. It never feels unearned. It never feels out of place either. Even for the time, it's actually kind of like, you know, given this is set in 1932 in the Mississippi Delta region too, it's even when we do get, you know, sort of movies of this era too, they're not usually this vulgar either. Like, and so it's a different thing. They're also not really this bloody either, in a lot of ways too. I loved it. I also want to give special shout outs to, before I go into closing thoughts, a couple of the performances, just two that I want to note that we didn't really touch on too much in this movie that I do want to give flowers to is Wunmi Mosaku as Annie. I thought she is really such a good emotional center, especially during the vampire attack. I think she's a really good emotional center and just a lovely character too. And then also he's used very sparingly, but I think he's good. He's effectively used comic relief as Omar Miller as Cornbread. I thought he was pretty funny too, especially the come on, Stack, let me in. You know what I mean? That whole thing, that whole bit, I loved, absolutely loved. No, it's so good. If you haven't seen it yet, go see it. I hope this is my last hope now too. I hate to keep making demands, but I just want to end with this. Because I ended my review saying that people need to support this thing because I don't want to see Ryan Coogler remake Friday in 3 years because this movie didn't make any money. I would watch that, but I wouldn't be happy about it. But the thing I want to say though is that now the onus isn't on the people anymore. The masses have come out and supported this thing and made this thing almost a 200. This thing's gonna make over $250 million when all's said and done, which is a massive win. But what I want now is Warner Brothers. This fucking thing shouldn't be streaming even on PVOD until mid-June. You keep this thing in theaters. You ride this out. You ride
the black
this
community. The black community is coming out for this movie.
Don't put this fucker in
alone, let alone the rest.
Yeah, don't put this fucker on Fandango at home in 3 weeks. Like, give this movie the entire runway of May, you know, to continue to earn. Because this thing has already proven in 2 weeks of release that it has legs, and I think I'm gonna foresee, especially with that loss of the IMAX theaters, I'm going to go optimistic and say a 40% drop this week. Maybe 35, 40. Even with the loss of IMAX theaters with Thunderbolts, I think this movie is going to leg strong. So I hope that Warner Brothers keeps this in theaters long enough for this movie to continue to marinate, continue to make money, and continue to be a success too. Because I think it's another movie too that demands repeated viewings, and I cannot wait for another one too before I make my end of the year list. It's 3.5 out of 4 stars. Asterisk subject to change. 3.5 out of 4 stars. Joe, then Dom for closing thoughts.
I just want to make a correction. I said Beatrice. I meant to say Annie. Annie's the character. Yeah.
I thought you did.
Sorry, IMDb did a weird job with the top build, like in this movie, where it's like they have characters who are like not even like really like big in the movie at the very top. So I was like, that's not the actress, I don't think. And like,
they
you know,
do that.
Yeah, and it's just like I'm pretty sure that's not her, and I'm just like, all right, I think it is because she's at the top, and then I come to find
wife.
Yeah. I was like, why is Beatrice this high up? Like, oh my god. Anyway, sorry about that. It says Top Cast 35, and she's like number 5 right there, and I'm like, huh, okay, weird. Yeah, dude, I have little to no complaints about this. I think the biggest complaint I have about it, and I don't mean big here, it's just it was just something that kind of made me go, this is a bit weird, is when we get to the vampire part, I do feel like it does a little bit of weird stuff where it's like, we established they're vampires, here they come. Okay, but before we do that, we have to do this scene where everybody eats garlic, even though, like, nobody... It's just like, okay, like, I get it, you're trying to do, like, the thing, but, like, it really led to nowhere, but I realized, like, alright, I know why you're doing it. Because throughout the whole, like, second act of this movie, when the juke closes and they're surrounded by vampires, we mainly focus on, like, 5 people in that shack. And then all of a sudden, there's all these extras that got killed by vampires when they break in. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. That's why we're having this scene, so you can see how many extras are actually here, because then they could get killed by the vampires when they break in. It was so weird, where it's like, every shot is just like the 5 people. Grace, Smoke, Annie, Sammy. It was just like those 5 people, and Slim. Those 5 people in there, and then all of a sudden it's like you have all these random people in there when the vampires break in, so the vampires have more to kill than just the characters we've been following. It was like kind of like a thing that like kind of bugged me a bit. It was just like, okay, we're just doing these things because like you're showing like, oh, see, there's still extras here, when like there's so many shots where like they're not. Besides that, this movie's a 4 out of 4 star movie for me. This is my favorite movie of the year. I absolutely love this movie. I can't believe like how good it was. It blew me away. It blew past every expectation I had of it. Every year on Letterboxd now, I've been just making a like top like 15 or 20 movies I'm anticipated to see in theaters. and this was number 3, and I'm really happy to see like how much this really did live up to that hype. Can't wait to see how the other two do, because it's gonna be hard to top this. Not that I'm gonna be comparing them to this, but like, damn, I mean, this is an easy 4 out of 4 stars for me.
Tom, send us home.
4 out of 4 stars is rare for me to give, and to do it this many times for a director is honestly like astounding. And it puts a lot of pressure on that director, but I'm going to continue to apply that pressure with Sinners. I'm pretty sure I gave Black Panther 4 out of 4 stars. I better have. Retrospectively, that the culture and vibe of that movie is so damn good if I didn't before. But yeah, man. The history here is beautiful. The culture is just gorgeous, and every interaction left me truly wanting more. I cannot describe the surprise that I get from having watched this movie, because I was kind of not dreading it, but I was more like, okay, are we gonna get like a kind of a flop here? This is kind of interesting. Not a flop, but rather, it's going to be a deflating movie for me personally. Whereas it's going to rely maybe too much on lean too much without saying something on its setting. It's going to maybe rely too much on the vampires, or be a little mess with such a frankly really good cast. And that's not the case. That's not the case at all. You can bet on Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan for being honestly they're low-key one of Hollywood's great power couples, and they're not even dating, man. They are soulmates in terms of film at this point. It seems like. So for Sinners, I'm frankly overjoyed. So 4 out of 4 stars for this really awesome movie. If I had the time, if I truly had the time, I would definitely go see it again. Yeah.
One other thing I forgot to mention, I probably should have put it in my closing thoughts too, but I will add this too, is that one of the great parts about the mid-credits scene is, I think one of the kind of wraparound points of this movie too is that, evil doesn't always lose. The good guys don't necessarily always win. And the fact of life is that it goes on. And that was kind of one of the takeaways I had when I was writing about the movie, rather, thinking about it more
Steve?
broadly.
That's the blues. That is truly what it is.
Ain't that the fucking blues too? I'm from the hometown where Muddy Waters spent the last few years of his life. So, like I said, there's a connection to the blues even there too. That's our show today. We're off next week. We are off next week, taking a little pause for the cause. Nothing of note, no matter what Joe wants to say, nothing of note is coming out this weekend.
Tune in for my special Thunderbolt solo review.
Yeah, you see the Thunderbirds or Thundercats or whatever the hell, garbage of the galaxy. The real commit suicide squad, whatever you want to call it. But we're back on May 14th, I believe is the day. May 14th. We're back with Friendship. We're back with a review of Friendship. So looking forward to that movie. So we got a nice little week off here, a little week gap, and then really, Sinners feels like it's a little early. It is a little early. Usually it's around Memorial Day, but I can't help but feel like it does kick off the summer movie season in some ways.
Hey man, the last week of April sometimes has been used for that. Like, not to bring up Marvel again, but Infinity War and Endgame kind of kickstarted it.
Right.
There was other movies as well where Quiet Place Part 2 was another one that kind of like when theaters were reopening, same release time. Like, so it's not out of the ordinary for this to kind of kick off summer movie season.
And it's a terrific launch pad, too. I will say the last couple of years, we've had really good launch pads into summer. Top Gun Maverick, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, Sinners. It's been a great kind of launch pad. The movies that follow generally aren't great.
The Fall Guy. That's another one.
The Fall Guy, yeah. Almost forgot about that one, too. The Fall Guy was terrific. It was a terrific movie. But we'll be back in 2 weeks with Friendship. We're off next week. Thank you so much for watching. As always, for Joe Viso, Dominic Guanzon, and yours truly, this has been Sleepless with Steve.